A door slammed in a thin woman's face. She stumbled into the mud. The basket in her hands tipped. A crust of bread rolled across the stones and vanished down a drain. Behind her, a child began to cry. She did not turn. If she turned, the child would see her face. The child could not see her face. Not today. So she stayed on her knees, forehead pressed to cold, wet stone. She had knocked on 7 doors that morning. 7 doors had closed. The 8th was the largest house she had ever stood in front of. Her name was Eleanor. She was 41, a widow with no roof over her head. She had not eaten in 3 days. What she was about to ask the most powerful man in that county would leave his household in a silence they had never heard. Stay with me on this one. The man at the gate of the 8th house did not know what to do with her. He had seen merchants. He had seen noblemen. He had seen messengers and farmers and travelers with sealed letters. He had not seen this. A woman in a torn shawl on a wet morning, with a small child standing 6 paces behind her. The boy was 5. His name was Thomas. He was Eleanor's sister's son. Her sister had died 8 months ago. Her sister's husband had died 6 months before that. The boy had nobody now. Nobody but Eleanor. He had Eleanor's sister's eyes. White, gray, too quiet for a child his age. He did not cry. He had stopped crying a week ago. That, more than the hunger, was what frightened her. Eleanor stood at the gate and asked the old man if she might speak with the Duke. The old man almost laughed. Then he looked at her face. Then he looked at the boy. He did not laugh. He had been a soldier once. He had served the Duke's father in 3 wars. He had seen women like this before in towns that had been burned. He knew the look. He opened the gate. He told her to leave the boy with the head groom. The groom would give the boy a crust and a place by the stable fire. The boy could wait there. Thomas looked up at Eleanor. He did not want to let go of her hand. She knelt down in the mud and looked into his face. She told him this would not take long. She told him to be brave. She told him she loved him. She kissed his forehead. Then she let go of his hand and walked into the courtyard alone. The house was the largest in the county. Eleanor had heard about it her whole life. She had pictured it grander than it turned out to be. In truth, it was simpler. Heavy stone walls, dark wood, a great open hall with 1 long table down the middle. The Duke was at the far end of that table. He was younger than she had expected. The rumors had made him sound ancient. He was not ancient. He was perhaps 40. Black hair going gray at the temples. A hard mouth. Tired eyes. He was eating alone. He looked up when she entered. He did not say anything. Eleanor had imagined this moment for 2 days. She had rehearsed the words. She had practiced them under her breath as she walked. She had picked them as carefully as a woman picks stones out of dry beans. And now, standing in the great hall, with all those words ready in her mouth, she could not say a single one of them. She just stood there. The Duke set down his knife. A steward stepped forward, ready to remove her. The Duke raised 1 finger. The steward stopped. The Duke gestured for her to come closer. Eleanor walked. The hall was long. Every step took something out of her. She had not slept properly in 5 nights. She had not eaten properly in 3 days. She had walked 9 miles that morning. She was 41 years old, and her legs were 41 years old, and every step felt like 10. When she reached the table, she stopped. She did not know how to begin. The Duke looked at her for a long moment. Then he said very quietly, very simply, "Madam, what is it you came to ask?" She felt the wedding ring on the chain under her dress. Her husband's. She had not been able to sell it. She had tried. 3 pawnbrokers had refused. They said it was tin and not gold. They said it was worth nothing. Whatever it was, she had kept it. It hung against her heart. It was the only thing left of the man she had loved for 16 years. She took a breath. She had decided on the road that morning that she would not beg. She would not weep. She would not throw herself at his feet. She was the widow of a good man. The man was dead. She was alive. The boy was alive. That was something. She said the words. She said them quietly. She said them clearly. She said them with the dignity of someone who had nothing left to lose and knew exactly how little that was. What she asked him stopped the breath in every person in that hall. She said, "My lord, my sister's son is 5 years old. He has not eaten since Sunday. I have nothing to offer you. I have no claim on you. I have no right to ask anything of any man in this house. But I would like to ask you a question. If you say no, I will go, and I will not come back." The Duke did not move. She said, "Whatever you do not finish at this table tonight, the bones, the crusts, the peelings, whatever you would give to your dogs, could the boy and I have it instead? We will eat it outside. We will not come into the house. We will not be seen by anyone. I will not ask you again. I just need to feed the boy tonight." The hall was silent. Eleanor looked at the floor. She had said it. She had said all of it. She had asked the question. She did not want to see his face when he answered, so she looked at the floor. She heard the Duke set down his knife. She heard the Duke push back his chair. She heard the Duke stand up. She closed her eyes. She heard his footsteps, not toward the door, not toward the steward, toward her. He stopped in front of her. He was a tall man. She felt the height of him without looking up. He smelled like wood smoke and old wool. He stood very close. He said, "Madam, look at me." Eleanor lifted her face. His eyes were not what she had expected. They were not cold. They were not pitying. They were something else. Something she could not name in that moment. He said, "Leftovers are for dogs." The hall stayed silent. Eleanor felt her chest go cold. She had asked for too much. She had asked the wrong man. She had walked into the wrong house. She turned very slowly to go. The Duke caught her arm. Not hard, just enough to stop her. He said, "Madam, you did not let me finish." Eleanor stopped. He said, "Leftovers are for dogs. And you, madam, are not a dog. Your sister's son is not a dog. You will not eat leftovers in my house. You will eat the same food I eat, at the same table I eat at, tonight, and every night, for as long as you wish to stay." Eleanor did not understand what was happening. She had heard the words. She did not understand them. The Duke turned to the steward. He said, "Set 2 more places. Send a boy to the stable. Bring the child here. Bring him here now. And bring the head cook. I want hot food on this table within the quarter hour." The steward did not move at first. The steward was used to being shocked, but he had never been shocked quite this badly. Then he bowed and went. The Duke looked at Eleanor. He said, "Sit down, madam. Please, sit down before you fall down." Eleanor sat down. The chair was warm where it had been sitting in front of the fire. The Duke pulled it out himself. He did not call a servant to do it. He pulled it out himself. A door opened at the far end of the hall. Thomas came in. He had a piece of bread in one hand. He had straw in his hair. He had been afraid to come in alone. The old soldier from the gate walked behind him, one hand on his small shoulder. When Thomas saw Eleanor sitting at the Duke's table, his eyes went round. He did not know what to do. Eleanor held out her arms. Thomas ran. He climbed into her lap. He pressed his face into her shawl. He did not cry. He had stopped crying a week ago, but he held onto her with both small hands. The Duke watched this. He did not say a word for a long time. Then he said very softly to the boy, "Young sir, there is a chair next to your aunt. It is a very good chair. It is the chair my brother used to sit in when we were boys. I would like you to sit in it tonight." Thomas looked up at Eleanor. Eleanor nodded. Thomas climbed into the chair. A servant brought a cushion. The chair was too big. The cushion helped. Thomas sat with his small hands folded in his lap and waited, the way he had been taught. Hot food came. Broth, bread, meat, apples cooked with honey, a cup of milk for the boy, a cup of wine for Eleanor. The Duke watched them eat. He ate very little himself. He watched. Eleanor tried to eat slowly. She tried to remember how. Her hands shook. She had to put the spoon down twice. She did not look at the Duke. She could not. Thomas ate everything. He ate the bread first, then the broth, then the meat. He ate the apples last. He ate them very slowly, the way a person eats something they are afraid will be taken away. When he finished, he looked up at the Duke, and he said, "Thank you, sir." It was the most words Thomas had spoken in a week. The Duke nodded gravely. He said, "You are welcome, young sir." After the meal, the Duke arranged for them to stay the night. That night turned into a week. The week turned into a month. A small room was given to them, with 2 beds and a fireplace and a window that looked out over the orchard. Eleanor refused to be idle. She worked in the kitchen. She mended linen. She earned her food. The Duke noticed. He did not stop her. Thomas began to laugh again after about 10 days. The first time he laughed, Eleanor wept. By the end of the 2nd month, Eleanor sat by the fire one night after Thomas had gone to sleep. She had a piece of mending in her lap. The fire was warm. The room was quiet. She thought, for the first time in 2 years, that perhaps the world was not entirely bad. That perhaps they were safe. That was the night the carriage came up the road. A carriage in the courtyard. Wheels on stone. 2 horses, hard-ridden. A man's voice in the front hall, raised, demanding. Eleanor sat up. She set down her mending. She did not go to the door. She did not need to. The voice carried. It was a man who was used to being obeyed. It was a man who was very angry. He was demanding to see the Duke. Eleanor heard her own name in his mouth. She did not understand how he knew her name. The man's name was Lord Ashby. He was the Duke's cousin. He was the next heir if the Duke had no son. The Duke had no son. The Duke had no wife. Everyone in the county knew this. Eleanor had not known it before that month, but the kitchen staff had told her, the way servants tell things in pieces over weeks. Lord Ashby had come because he had heard a rumor. The rumor was that there was a woman in the Duke's house, peasant woman, with a child of unknown origin, eating at the Duke's table, sleeping under the Duke's roof. Lord Ashby was very angry about this. Eleanor stood and walked to the door. She opened it a crack. She listened. The 2 men were in the great hall. The voices came up the stairs. Lord Ashby was saying, "You will send her away tonight. Tonight, cousin. Or I will go to London. I will go to the family. I will tell them you have lost your mind. I will tell them you have brought a beggar into our house. I will have you declared unfit. The estate will go into trusteeship. I will be the trustee. You will lose everything. Do you hear me? Tonight." The Duke's voice was very quiet when he answered. He said, "Get out of my house." There was a pause. Then Lord Ashby laughed. A short, ugly laugh. He said, "You think this is about a meal. You poor sentimental fool. It is not about a meal. It is about a debt." Eleanor's hand tightened on the door. Lord Ashby said, "Her husband, the dead one, he owed £200 to my late father. I have the bond. The bond was never paid. The bond falls to the widow. The widow cannot pay. The law allows me to take her into custody and the child as collateral. I have the magistrate's word on it. I will come back in 3 days. With the magistrate, with 3 men. If she is still here, I will take her from your house in chains. And I will take the boy as well." There was a silence. The Duke did not answer for a long time. Then he said again very quietly, "Get out of my house." Footsteps. The front door. The carriage. Hooves on stone. Then silence. Now before we go any further, if you are still with me on this one, hit that subscribe button. The next part is where everything turns, and I do not want you to miss it. Eleanor closed the bedroom door. She sat down on the edge of the bed. Thomas was asleep on the other bed, his cheek pressed against the pillow, his small hand curled into a fist. She knew what she had to do. She did not let herself cry. Not yet. There was no time for crying. She packed their bag. It did not take long. They did not have much. The shawl, the dress, the boy's coat, the wooden horse the Duke had given Thomas the week before. She took that last and held it for a moment. Then she packed it. She wrote a note. She put the note on the table. She woke Thomas. She told him they were going on an adventure. She lifted him up. He was getting heavier. He had eaten well for 2 months. He was no longer the small, light thing she had carried into the Duke's gate. That was good. That was the best thing. She carried him down the back stairs. The Duke was waiting at the bottom of the back stairs. He had a candle in one hand. He had his coat on. He had a look on his face that she had never seen before. He said, "No." Eleanor said, "My lord, please, he will come back. He will come with the magistrate. He will take Thomas. He has the law. I cannot let him take Thomas." The Duke said, "I heard him. I heard every word. You think I heard him and then went to bed." Eleanor did not know what to say. The Duke said, "Put the boy down. He is asleep. Put him down on the bench. He will not wake. I want to speak with you. In my study. Now." Eleanor did as she was told. She followed the Duke down a hallway she had never walked. She had spent 2 months in this house. She had not been in this room. The study had a fire. The study had a writing desk. The study had a small painting on one wall. The painting was of a young woman. The young woman was holding a baby. Eleanor stopped at the painting. The Duke said, "My wife. She died in childbirth. The boy died with her. 11 years ago." Eleanor turned to face him. The Duke said, "I have not let anyone into this room since." He set the candle down on the desk. He said, "Sit down, please. We have 3 days. We have a great deal to do." Eleanor sat down. She did not understand. She said, "My lord, the debt. He has a bond. If the bond is real, there is nothing to be done. He has the law." The Duke said, "The bond is a lie." Eleanor blinked. The Duke said, "Your husband, Robert Whitfield, a schoolmaster, of the village of Eastby. I have been looking into your husband. I started a week after you came to my gate. I am sorry. I did it without telling you. I needed to know who you were." Eleanor said nothing. The Duke said, "Robert Whitfield was a good man. He paid every debt he owed. He owed nothing to Lord Ashby's father. The bond is forged. Lord Ashby is a desperate man. He has gambling debts. He has been borrowing against this estate for 3 years. He needs me out of the way. He needs me declared unfit. You and the boy are simply the excuse." Eleanor put her hands over her face. The Duke said, "There is something else. Your husband left a letter for you. I believe he gave it to a man named Tobias Webb, a friend of his." Eleanor lowered her hands. She said, "Tobias is dead. He died last winter." The Duke said, "Tobias's son brought the letter to me 4 weeks ago. He had been searching for you. When he heard there was a widow named Eleanor at this house, he came. The letter is in this drawer. I have not opened it. It is your letter. I had no right to open it. I am giving it to you now." He unlocked a drawer. He took out a folded paper, sealed with a brown wax stamp. He held it out to her. Eleanor took the letter. Her hands shook. She broke the seal. Her husband's handwriting. The handwriting she had not seen in 2 years. It was a short letter. He had written it on the day he died. He had known he was dying. He had not told her. He had written it for after. He had written, "Eleanor, my love, there is a tin box behind the loose stone in the chimney. Open it. What is inside is for you and for any child you have, and for any child of your sisters if it should come to that. Forgive me for not telling you sooner. I did not want you to worry while I was alive. Be brave. I will see you again. Your husband, Robert. Eleanor read the letter twice. The Duke watched her. He said, I sent a man to your old cottage 3 days ago. He found the tin box. It is here, in this drawer. I did not open it either. I am giving it to you now. He set a small tin box on the desk. Eleanor opened it. Inside the box were papers, and inside the papers were coins, gold coins, 12 gold sovereigns, and a deed to the cottage, paid in full, free and clear, and a separate small paper. The separate small paper was a receipt signed by Lord Ashby's father, a receipt for £200, paid in full. 8 years ago, Eleanor began to cry. She had not cried in 3 days. She had not cried in front of the Duke at any point in 2 months. She cried now, quietly, into her hands. The Duke did not say anything. He stood by the fire and waited. When she could speak, she said, He paid the debt. Robert paid the debt. 8 years ago. The Duke said, Yes. Eleanor said, Lord Ashby knows this. He has the original copy. He simply forged a duplicate. He thought there was no proof. The Duke said, Yes. Eleanor said, Then we have him. The Duke said, Yes, we have him. 3 days later the carriage came back. This time the carriage had 4 horses. This time the carriage had 2 men beside Lord Ashby, the magistrate, and a clerk with a chain to put on Eleanor's wrists. They came into the great hall. The Duke was waiting at the table. Eleanor was beside him. She wore a clean dress. She had not eaten breakfast. She had not been able to. Thomas was upstairs. The Duke had asked her if she wanted Thomas to be there. Eleanor had said no. Lord Ashby smiled when he came in. He said, I see you have not made her run. Good. This will be quick. The magistrate held out a paper. He said, Mrs. Whitfield, you are summoned for the debt of your late husband, in the sum of £200. The bond is to be paid today, or you are to come with us into custody. Your child also. The Duke stood. He said, Magistrate, before you continue, there is a paper you should see. He held out the receipt. The magistrate took the receipt. He read it. He read it again. He turned to Lord Ashby. He said, My lord, this paper is signed by your father. 8 years ago, it says the debt was paid in full. Lord Ashby's face went white. He said, That is a forgery. The Duke said, No, the forgery is the bond in your hand. I have a man in London who has been examining that bond all week. The seal is wrong. The ink is wrong. The paper is wrong. The bond was made within the last 6 months. By you. We have a witness. He arrived from London this morning. He is in the next room. The magistrate looked at Lord Ashby. Then the magistrate did something Lord Ashby did not expect. The magistrate turned to the clerk and said, Put the chain on him. Lord Ashby was led out of the great hall in his own chain. The Duke watched him go. Then the Duke turned to Eleanor. He said, There is one more thing I must say, and I would like to say it in front of the magistrate before he leaves. Magistrate, stay a moment. The magistrate stopped. The Duke turned to Eleanor. He said, Madam, I have spent 2 months wondering how to ask you a question. I have been a coward about it. I am not going to be a coward today. Eleanor Whitfield, I would be honored if you would consider in time when you are ready becoming my wife. I do not ask for an answer today. I do not ask for an answer this month. I ask only that you do not laugh at me. Eleanor did not laugh. She said, Yes. She said it the same way she had asked the first question. Quietly, clearly, with the dignity of someone who had thought about it carefully. The Duke closed his eyes. The magistrate, who had seen many strange things in his career, said later that he had never seen a duke close his eyes the way that man closed his eyes when she said yes. 1 year passed. The wedding was quiet. Eleanor had wanted it quiet. There were no London guests. There were no grand processions. The Duke wore his usual dark coat. Eleanor wore a green dress that had been her mother's, mended and let out and made fresh. Thomas wore a coat the Duke had ordered for him from a tailor in town. The coat had a brass button. Thomas was very proud of the brass button. He polished it every morning with a cloth. Lord Ashby was tried in London. He was found guilty of forgery and conspiracy. He was stripped of his title and his lands. The lands went to a younger nephew of the Duke's, a quiet man who was not a gambler. The Duke's house changed, not in any of the ways that people in the village had expected. It did not become grander. The Duke did not give parties. Eleanor did not buy silks. There were no carriages with painted wheels. What changed was this. On the first Monday after the wedding, Eleanor walked down to the great hall at first light. The cook was already there. The cook had been with the family for 30 years. The cook looked up when Eleanor came in. Eleanor said, "Cook, I would like to do a thing. I would like to do it every Monday. I would like the kitchen to make extra food on Sundays. Hot food, bread, broth, whatever there is. On Monday morning, I want it set out in the courtyard. I want anyone who is hungry to come and take it." The cook did not say anything for a moment. Then the cook said, "How much, my lady?" Eleanor said, "As much as anyone needs." The cook nodded. The cook had been waiting 30 years for someone to say a thing like that. By the third Monday there was a line in the courtyard. By the sixth Monday there was a line out the gate. Women came. Old men came. Children came. People who had walked from villages 3 valleys away. People who had been turned away from other gates that month, the way Eleanor had been turned away from 7 gates the year before. Eleanor stood at the kitchen door every Monday morning. She did not hand out the food herself. The cook did that. Eleanor stood at the door and watched. She watched the faces. She watched the hands. She did not say a great deal. She did not give speeches. She just stood there. People sometimes thanked her, and she would nod, and she would say one thing she had said the first morning and had not changed since. She would say, "Leftovers are for dogs." She would say, "You are not dogs." She would say, "Eat. There is more." The Duke watched her from his study window most Monday mornings. He did not interfere. He did not come down. He let her have it. He had said to her, once in their first month of marriage, that he had spent 11 years not knowing what his house was for. He had said that he thought he knew now. Eleanor never forgot the 7th door. The 7th door had been the worst of them. It had been the door of a man named Holloway, a tradesman, a man with a fat purse and a thin heart. Eleanor had stood at his door, on the morning before she went to the Duke's house, with Thomas asleep in her arms from hunger. Holloway had told her to go away. Holloway had said that if she did not go away, he would set his dog on her. He had said this with the door half closed and his foot in the gap and a smile on his face. 2 years after the wedding, on a Monday morning, a man came through the gate of the Duke's courtyard with his hat in his hands. He stood in the line. He waited his turn. It was Holloway. He had lost his business. He had lost his wife. He had lost his fat purse and his big house. He had walked 4 miles that morning to stand in this line. When he got to the kitchen door, Eleanor was there. He recognized her. He went very pale. He started to back away. Eleanor said, "Mr. Holloway, wait." She walked to the cook. She picked up a bowl herself. She filled it herself. She walked back to him. She held the bowl out to him. She said, "You are not a dog." She said, "Eat." Holloway took the bowl. His hands shook. He could not look at her. Eleanor said, "Sit by the wall. There is bread coming." Holloway sat by the wall. He ate. Eleanor went back inside. That night, Eleanor walked the great hall with Thomas at her side. Thomas was 7 now. He was tall for 7. He held her hand the way he had always held her hand. The Duke met them at the far end of the table. He had been waiting. Thomas climbed into his chair without help now. He had outgrown the cushion the year before. Eleanor sat beside the Duke. The three of them ate together. There were no servants in the hall that night. The Duke had sent them away. The food was simple: bread, broth, apples cooked with honey. It was the same meal she had eaten on the first night. When they were finished, the Duke reached across the table and put his hand over Eleanor's hand. He did not say anything for a long time. Then he said, "You changed everything, Eleanor." Eleanor smiled. She said, "No, my lord. You did. You changed it the moment you stood up. You changed it the moment you walked around that table. You changed it the moment you said leftovers were for dogs and I was not a dog." She squeezed his hand. She said, "I just kept it going." Outside, the courtyard was empty. The line had gone home for the night. The kitchen door was closed. In the morning, the cook would open it again. And somewhere, in the dark of some other village, on some other road, a thin woman with a child in her arms was already walking toward it.